Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Be Quiet Light Base 600 LX. This case is going to be used in my test system. So while working on it, this is the back side. I'm taking out the pieces in prep work. These fans are going to go on the bottom, and we got the controller sitting right at the top. I know that this has been in a bunch of other reviews, but I'm going to probably log in piece by piece. All right, to get at the drive base, you need to take out 1, 2, and 3 screws, and then it just lifts up, and I have easy access to that compartment. Well, removing these fans is a time-consuming process. I need to unscrew, lift this, undo the cable ties, and then unplug, read it through. But luckily, there is a second controller down there for syncing the lights and stuff like that, so you don't run out of fan headers and RGB headers. To get at the bottom, unscrew, rotates, pops off. It's got these little nubs into the slot. For ease of installation, I have these loose so I can adjust them to the exact position I want. Well, the Torrent case looks very empty now. Obviously, I had to take out the GPU, and it's sitting right over there, saving screws in place so that I can find them. And we got the motherboard just kind of hanging out there. I need to put in screws, so very carefully place it in so as to not scratch the back. Just get it aligned. And well, let's keep going. All right, I hope this shows up well on camera. Be quiet. If you could just, I don't know, make a little box, especially at the price tag of this case, over $160. Well, I mean, I guess you include the value of the fans, but just have a little box case that flips open, because these bags are not reusable, just in case don't use them all. It just makes it easy to lose things. Yada, yada, yada. And if you're wondering how I set about putting in screws, I do a couple corners first just to kind of lock it in its position, and then I do the middle. It doesn't look bad with an air cooler in there, just this case isn't really designed for air coolers. So if you can imagine it, if you have fans here blowing air, up in, so that means the air has to do a 90-degree turn, get pulled into here, and then blown out the back, right? You need an exhaust fan. Because this back opening isn't big enough. Otherwise, some air is going to hit this wall and do absolutely nothing. Bottom intake is going to do just fine, cool the GPU, but you still need that exhaust fan to pull the air. Otherwise, it's just going to get trapped in the case, again, out the back. So just, looking at this case, I wouldn't do an air cooler. It's not going to be overly effective. It's not going to drive it very well. So liquid cooling is the way to go. You can set this up with a custom loop. Actually, there's a huge slot of space right there for maybe a pump or something. I don't know how it would mount. Or you could put a big radiator right here and, have the thing mount there, radiator at the bottom, radiator at the top. You can even have a radiator at the back. Look at all the radiator spots. So if you're just going to do like an AAO radiator, personally, this is the way I'm doing it, but I also am using it as a test bench. I'm going to put the radiator at the top, so it's going to blow from the bottom to the top, so that, like a chimney. So the air does have to go past the GPU, whatever, to get to the top, but it should be just fine. What I do here, and then have the fans at the bottom, no, you still need fans at the top. I'm going to have this horizontal. If you had it vertical, well, you won't need these fans. You'd have it here for style. Would you put the AIO there to suck air in? Well, you're going to run into the same problem. I wouldn't have fans at the bottom then. Otherwise, you're going to have it too pressurized. I mean, I guess you could have really low RPM fans, run it really quietly, but the airflow through the AIO, if you put one here, would be the most important, and you basically have those at 0, and you suck air at the top. But the most efficient flow path is straight top to bottom if you're going with a radiator, single radiator AIO type setup. All right, well, I'm getting it finished up. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem with the liquid cooler in that it doesn't have the right mounting kit, so I had to buy a mounting kit for the Liquid Freezer 3 for the LGA 1200. I know it's kind of wonky, but I wanted a future-proof cooler, so buying the $9 kit is worth it. In the meantime, I'm going to be using, that's what it looks like right now. I also don't have the final cooler installed yet, so right now it's just using an air cooler. It is going to get an AIO for my testing purposes. So this is sufficient for the time being. It's what it looks like, good amount of clearance. This is a DeepCool Assassin 4. before the embargo against DeepCool. So while I'm thinking about my impressions of this case, while I still have the air cooler installed, I have the AIO and the bracketry to all install it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Just finished running thermal testing on it and some thoughts. So 1 exhaust fan to blow air out, right? 3 intakes. And then this is just open. So in theory, I have a high pressure system, so the air should just try to escape out the top. In practice during the tests, I felt almost no air movement coming out the top. And I did not feel enough coming out the back. It was quite warm. So how do I say this? If you were to run this with an air cooler with, let's say, I high-powered it until, wow, the glass is warm right here. Nowhere else, not with the GPU, but right there, the glass is warm. You want a higher speed fan. So the stock fans, I haven't tested them. They're going to be put through my standard testing, but I assume probably 1,000, maybe 1,500. I would put a 2,000 plus RPM fan back there. Just something that can move significantly more air to just pull hot air out. Now, this is primarily sucking out CPU air. Then you could take this front one, this one, and maybe put it at the top and just help get extra air at the top from the, you know, it's creating a flow path around. So the flow path, you know, starting at the bottom, the air it wants to come up, and then the CPU is going to draw it in and pull it out. So you need a higher RPM fan just to help draw more air through, and it actually will help suck air through the CPU air cooler, so maybe air won't stagnate behind it. Because if this back fan on the air cooler is faster than the exhaust fan, it's not going to be able to push air out fast enough, and it'll stagnate and kind of sit in the case and go wherever you don't want it. So I would put a higher RPM fan up there, and maybe you could put that one at the top. It might look a little weird. I would not put it up here because it's going to be drawing air away from the cooler, so they're going to be fighting. The airflow is going to be fighting against each other. But this case, you know, really is functioning more for AIOs, liquid coolers, that kind of thing. I'm just saying if you're going to do this as a stopgap. And that's what I was doing. I found it pretty noisy with this particular cooler on it. The fans down here were nice and quiet when running the full load. I was only hearing this fan. Okay, well, this is not going to be an official review of the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 280, but I'm going to install it. And I got the adapter mounting kit. I just wanted something future capable. And because I'm going to be using this in a test system, I just want to note something first before I take it apart. It has a really nice wiring job. So they got all the cables, and it comes through, where is it? Right there, through the sleeved cable from the base. So you can have it all nicely and neatly controlled, and it's all nice and tight. Unfortunately, because how I'm going to use it, I'm going to ruin part of it. So I think it connects in here, so I'm going to have to take that out. So I'm basically going to uninstall this fan and then reinstall it, and then so that way I can use one fan for testing. All right, with that, the AIO is installed. Now, I want to note I have it installed pretty side to the back because this is going to be used in a test system, so beauty is secondary, but the side panel should hide these cables pretty well. But I needed access to, you know, that and the RGB connector just so I could get in there. And what? I have an extension cable right here so that this one can be individually controlled, so that's easier to get to. This is going to be laid on its side, so the cross airflow is going to be bottom to top, except it's going to be from like right side to left side because it's going to be horizontal. I did think about installing it vertically here, and the air would exhaust down, but I decided against it just in case I were to ever upgrade the GPU in this test system and it got longer, harder to access things, yada, yada, yada. What else do I want to say? Installing it took, I don't know, longer than it should because I kept getting distracted. LGA 1200 installed just fine, just followed the instructions. It was all online. They've got the little Q code scan things, worked out great. I haven't even booted it up yet. And normally I'd also have the pump cables would go to, you know, this side and extend and go this way. But again, test system, so stuff them that way. That's the way it looks. All right, we got it buttoned up tight. It's all plugged in. The software hasn't finished loading for the RGB to be its final appearance, but that fan has a tick. Hear it rattle? I'm gonna have to contact Arctic about that one fan apparently. But other than that, it is looking fantastic. So I have a cable coming in for that RGB header right there so that I can loop more things together and create the profiles and be able to use the top part for testing. But yeah, other than that, that's the way it will look for testing. This isn't the way it would look for if I was building my own system. I'd tuck the cables behind, have this on the other side, blah, blah, blah. I already talked about that. But yeah. Before we get into the data, I would like to thank Mint Mobile for being today's video partner. Thanks to Mint Mobile's wireless plans, it is possible to not only switch away from big, expensive mobile companies, but to also have a quality, affordable plan for me and my family. Mint Mobile's premium wireless plan starts at just $15 a month for a 3-month plan. I can get high-speed data and unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. I can bring my own phone along and my current phone number, so you don't need to memorize a new phone number, something I have always found difficult. Switching to Mint is super easy thanks to digital eSIM cards, which most phones have. You can sign up and activate immediately right from your own phone from the comfort of your own home. If your phone doesn't have a digital eSIM card, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. And right now, new customers, Mint Mobile is offering 50% off their first 12 months of unlimited plan. It's the best deal of the year and only available a limited time. If you're interested in learning more about Mint Mobile and switching, visit my link or by clicking the link in the video description down below. Okay, OBS is running. I do apologize for the extra noise, but we got the GPU Geek 3D Furmark running. I got some temperature readouts over here. Got my fan RPMs and other data information. I can resize that, so it might be a little bit easier to read. But the CPU is throttling, hitting its maximum temperature. You know, it's at 91 degrees. It's been running for, how long has it been? 6 minutes. CPU and GPU both. Package power is just shy, or right around 188 watts of power, spiked to 250 just about. Cooling must have not gotten there. The clock speeds have been holding mostly stable. Around, I think I've lost about 100 megahertz from when I was seeing it about 4 minutes ago. So they're not dropping, but I think this is basically the limit for what we're seeing. And then the GPU should be actually holding the most stable. Obviously it didn't hold that maximum spike. Let's go ahead and reset this. Where's that clear min max? And this way we can see if it drops a little bit over time. It's going to reset here in half a minute. All right, we're currently running Cinebench and Furmark all at the same time. The GPU is currently sitting at about 79 degrees C with the AIO helping draw air through it. Frames per second is around 33, 34. The Cinebench score is around 8,008 points. I mean, OBS is running all at the same time, so the score doesn't really necessarily matter. The point was to get the CPU 100% loaded to really test out how well I'm really looking more at GPU thermals than anything else for how well the system dumps heat out versus that air cooler than actual CPU performance, because comparing an AIO and an air cooler is like comparing an apple and an orange. Both are fruit, but they're completely different. And the amount of thermal performance I'm going to see out of the AIO that I use for test systems is going to be completely different. But we got the thermals over here on the side as some general cross comparison. Right now the CPU is only sitting at like 86 degrees C, so that's already lower than what I previously saw with the air cooler, where it was topping out at 90 degrees C. All right, this is purely for documentation purposes. While the benchmarks are running, OBS is on, and I have an Excel table open, but it's not actively being used, but it means my scores are going to be, well, a little bit lower. But I wanted to be able to compare thermals and average FPS kind of numbers, the scoring, for like. In this test, the air cooler is still installed, and yep, there's some spec information. Let's come down here to monitoring frames rate. The peak was at 62.83. The temperature for the CPU peaked at around 70 C. Let's double check that in a couple places. Right about 70. The GPU peaked at about 75. It was a slow climb the entire time. So now we have a data point to compare against. Okay, this is after I switched over to the liquid cooler as opposed to the air cooler. These are some of the scoring information, but we really care about more about the temperatures and how the FPS was looking and the clock speeds. So the CPU was rock solid, and so was the GPU across basically the entire test. As we come down to frames per second, we get this one spike, and if we're taking a look at the temperatures, the GPU was at 73 degrees and the CPU was at 49. And the peak for the CPU was probably at 49, and the peak for the GPU was like 75. So this cross airflow, or more like a chimney if the case was in a vertical format, should help draw that air out better. So let's go ahead and bring them side by side to compare. Now, ironically, the newest score and my first score are the closest, with the air cooler in the new test system case being the lowest, and the new liquid cooler in the test case and the air cooler in the test case, there was no, I didn't change anything between the two tests. I just let the system completely load up. Obviously, I did have to turn off the computer and that kind of thing, to not installing a cooler on a system that's on. But if we take a look at the overall scores, 3D Mark score, graphics score, and then if we take a look at the FPS, you know, it's only really 2 FPS total difference between the highest and the lowest. So, you know, that makes no difference really whatsoever. Let's see, GPU clock speeds. You know, this is why it's so weird, because the scores don't always make sense, because like the average clock for my newest test was actually a little bit lower, apparently. It ran warmer than the other tests, despite I'm 99% sure the airflow would be better in this newest test from December 23rd. So go figure that. I can't explain it other than, yeah, because these two, the middle and the rightmost, same, it's the same GPU, same cooler, just different cases, one in the Torrent, one in the Be Quiet. And the ventilation exiting the Be Quiet was not optimized with an air cooler in just personal opinion. With the liquid cooler, it's more like a cross flow type thing, so it should be significantly more efficient. Okay, now for record keeping again. This was TimeSpy Extreme. I'm not showing the benchmark, but you can see the frequencies were all holding nice and steady, which is one thing we do want to see. And the frame rate, 45, 53, what's that, 50 in the second test. Okay, temperatures, that's what we really want to care about. CPU was holding steady, well, it got a little spike there to 81. And then CPU test, obviously it's going to spike and just load up. We actually got up to 97, wow. Before stabilizing at about 90 degrees C. The GPU got up to around 73, 76, 77, 77.8 is the peak that I can see. So let's see how it does in that. All right, this is the part with the AIO in TimeSpy Extreme. Let's take a look at the clock speeds. They're holding pretty nice and steady. As we scroll across, GPU got a little bit of usage and holding nice and steady as well. All right, let's take a look at frame rates. Fluctuation is, I guess, fairly normal. We'll take a look at the comparison here in a second. Temperatures, CPU, GPU. Well, the GPU is holding nice and steady around 70, spiking at 76. The CPU spiking at around, let's see, 66, 63. And then the CPU test got up to about 90, but averaging in like the 85 range. And we heard how loud it was during that test with the load utilization. All right, let's go to the next test. Now we're into TimeSpy, and the base scores for all of them are pretty similar. As a matter of fact, the two last scores where I did not optimize my system for running benchmarks, as opposed to the test one where it was optimized, still pretty close. And the graphics scores, it does kind of show off things. CPU score, almost identical, except for when I stuck it in the new case without optimized airflow. It is actually pretty significantly lower. So what does that indicate? That was being suffocated inside that case. It was being a bit of a hot box. The graphics tests look very, very close. Actually makes a lot of sense here. Let's keep scrolling down as I open up things. GPU, clock frequencies. The first one actually got a little bit higher. Again, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. It was optimized for the test. Thermals. Well, between the Torrent and so the two temperatures between the air cooler and with the liquid cooler are basically identical for near on identical clock speeds. The Torrent PC case got the fastest speeds, again was optimized and had the lowest temperatures. So those 340s apparently do better than the 320s that are inside my new test system. But it's still perfectly reasonable in terms of those temperatures. Just for kicks and giggles, the processor, no meaningful difference. It makes a lot of sense. And, oh, there wasn't an average temperature listed. Oh, well. Once again, for record keeping, FireStrike Extreme clock speeds were once again looking overall very, very nice. Let's go take a look at temperatures. So once again, we can see FPS, plenty of, it's going to vary from scene to scene. And focusing on temperatures, the CPU, 70s. Then the CPU physics test spiked at 95 and then stabilized right back down to 90. So this is where it would relate back to that clock speed at 4.89 is where we want to see that. So there was no fluctuation in it, but certainly loaded up the CPU so that it drew more power. GPU, slow climb, 70, spiked at about 76.53. And the, what's this? The combined test, kind of the same. Okay. All right, now we got the FireStrike Extreme with the AIO. Let's take a look at first the frequencies. They hold very nice and steady. This means that it was within temperature limits and also getting no drops, which is very, very good. And if we come down to the detailed monitoring, my FPS doing pretty well. Physics score holding pretty steady. let's take a look at temperatures. All right, first test. Well, we see the GPU and CPU both kind of climbing. Actually, the CPU is holding pretty flat, close to 50 degrees C, while the GPU was around 74. Then we got the physics test. They swapped places. CPU maxed out at around 77, 78 degrees C, which is perfect. And in the combined test, 76 and 77. So overall doing fantastic. Last test, FireStrike Extreme. And if we take a look at the scores, I'm going to just go ahead and open up these tabs. It's going to jump a little bit. I apologize. If we take a look at the scores, well, the optimized one is obviously higher, but it is higher with the liquid cooler inside the Be Quiet as opposed to the air cooler. If we take a look at why, well, the graphics test 1, pretty darn close, and it was a pretty big drop from the original. And graphics test 2, pretty darn close to each other, which means it comes down to physics. Dun, 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 and that makes a ton of sense. The liquid cooler just must have allowed it to run a little bit cooler so it could spike a little bit higher and that kind of thing, versus just the air cooler inside of there. And inside the Torrent, well, there's just a massive amount of airflow, which really optimizes it, so it must have done really well there. And then if we look at the combined tests, All right, let's see if there's any thermals in this. All right, that is what I was hoping to finally see in one of these tests. So if we take a look at the clock speed on the GPU, they're all very similar. If you take a look at the average clock speed, the Torrent one, obviously the best because the system was optimized. I had it basically as a clean build with minimal stuff running, while the one inside the Be Quiet with the liquid cooler I'm highlighting right now really was more of just whatever was running. I just wanted to get thermal tests. And it's not the coolest, it's the second coolest, which indicates that the Torrent actually does have better GPU cooling than the Be Quiet, despite them both having fans that blow directly across the GPU. Just the better fans must really do it. But getting a better airflow inside of it appears to have really had a great effect at dropping the GPU temperatures, which is the test I wanted to see, and the data on the other ones was kind of weird. And if we take a look at the processor, unfortunately I don't have it for the original because for whatever reason 3DMark did not publish it. Same with the average clock speed. But I did get an increase in average clock speed between the air cooler and the AIO. You know, it makes sense. And a huge drop in temperatures. This isn't meant to advertise everybody to get an AIO. You should get whatever works best for your system. I need an AIO for test system for thermal data to give that extra resistance because a lot of you like to get out across radiators as opposed to a heatsink. And I need to reinstall the knock tool one if I wanted that. But you know, this is the way I ended up deciding to do it. So, what do I think overall? Well, I think that this was a very good decision. Obviously, I'm waiting on a fan to be swapped in there. I'll take the knock tool out. I will be able to get thermal testing done. So I haven't figured out what the minimum RPM that I can set this at. It's either going to be like 20, 30%. I don't really want it to be at 40% because it may affect results too much, and I want the block to get hot or the radiator to get hot. So I'm going to try to get that as low in RPM as possible and get the second one I can go from low to high 20 all the way up to 100%. We got the 3 fans that are going to blow across. We're going to have a GPU in there. Originally I was thinking about having no GPU, but I really don't want to take it out. And realistically, this is going to be more like how a real person's going to have a system other than maybe a front to back airflow type design. There's going to be no fan in the back. I don't see this as being negative. It should be more or less pretty neutral in terms of air pressure. So I don't expect air to come in there. Otherwise, I'll just put a mesh filter over there. But yep, this is what the test system is going to be. And I think it's going to work out great. The temperatures seem to run well. And again, I'm not advertising anybody to get an AIO. You should get whatever you like. But this is significantly quieter on this hot 11700K CPU than an air cooler. So that kind of would be the only way I'd recommend it. It's like if you got one of the hot Intel CPUs, AIOs really make a lot of sense on the much cooler, energy efficient, AMDs. Probably going to be just fine noise-wise with an air cooler. If you're looking for ways to help support this channel for this endeavor, Patreon, YouTube membership, throwing me a super, it really goes a long way in helping support this channel because now I have a dedicated test system. Costs money to operate it because it draws more power and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you know, it's up to you guys. I appreciate it if you want to throw it my way, but I'll continue making videos and I will start collecting fan data. I got some fans that are currently in testing as well as Woo! Fans that are awaiting, that I've already tested. So I'm going to go back through the fans that I have at hand to build up that data. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Computer Tech and More.